we'll jump straight into it. I'm actually going to come straight to you, Nick. So let's start with talent ID, because before player development, if we don't have the players, we can't develop them. So as a line in the sand, where we are today, guys, where we've been in the last 5 years, player and talent ID today, what's different, what are we doing different today, what's on the horizon, just a broad sweeping perspective on what it means for your organization in talent ID.
I think it's become a lot more aligned with club objectives and strategy, more so in the last 5 years, especially domestically here in the States. So clubs are setting objectives and strategies for player development from ownership through to the sporting departments into the technical departments that are now reflective of more contextual factors that relate to your club identity, your club strategy, your club game model. What is a potential transferable player out of your ecosystem into another ecosystem? So one of the big things I think we've seen is that club alignment domestically. Outside of that, you have this seemingly arms race for data, which is a new thing that's evolved and continues to evolve and develop all the time, and the expanded data. So how many data points, contextual data points, can you get in talent ID for your context, in your club, in your environment, for the type of players that you want? And it's seemingly expanded from, at the bottom is expanded, and it's become more clear and transparent at the top.
Great. We'll keep it in the US for a moment. So Elliot, just picking up on some stuff that Nick said there, organisation he's talking about. So I think what we've seen over the last probably 5-10 years is that the organisational influence of what the academy needs to be doing and how players are developed and how we need to recruit talent has kind of had more of an influence from the organisation, with sponsors now more involved and making sure philosophies are connected throughout the whole organisation. So being at Real Salt Lake for a long time and seeing that across every role that you've done, can you give some perspective on that drop-down effect from executive through to academy and talent ID?
Sure. I think it's been, I've been fortunate enough to be at the club for almost 15 years now, and in those 15 years we've gone from having one professional team with 20 players on the roster to, multiple academy teams, multiple professional teams, and running massive facilities. And so, to your point, it has opened the doors everywhere across the organization, from, like you said, sponsorship, partnership opportunities, ticketing, all of that, but also in how we identify and recruit and develop talent. So it's an absolute game changer. It's changed the way we do every piece of our business.
Yeah. And Nick, being more on the European side, the only one here, does that resonate? Is that familiar for what you see at Frankfurt, or you got some different perspectives on talent ID and where that is for your organisation?
I think the development is everywhere the same. In my case, I started in Frankfurt in 1996 as an under-19 coach, and every coach played his style of soccer. Every coach was responsible for scouting for his team at that time. Meanwhile, it changed a lot. Meanwhile, I was academy director in Frankfurt, and now I'm international relations. And data is getting more and more attention. We had developed a philosophy for all our youth teams, like the colleagues have in the other clubs. That changed the mindsetting of the coaches, because they didn't work for themselves anymore, but they worked for the club and for the philosophy of the club.
Understood. Yeah, and I think it's interesting, that philosophy as well. So I'm going to take a bit of a turn to you, Jason, because when we talk about philosophy, you've got 41 federations that you look after. So I imagine across that is there 41 different philosophies that you've got to deal with, or are you trying to get common ground in there? And give us some insights into what you're seeing across the board there.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see, when we're talking about talent identification, academies, you can see by how many people here, how interested people are, because this is the part of the game that gets everybody excited. How can we find emerging talent? How can we develop emerging talent? And to your question, of course, we have 41 different realities 41 different truths within all of those different countries. And of course, our role is to work collaboratively with all of the various stakeholders. What we have as a pathway here in the US is we've seen a lot of different development. We've seen MLS Next, we've seen a focus on developing and creating pathways for young players. Is it actually about them coming through and making their debut at MLS clubs, or is it about them going to Europe? I think there's been shifting thoughts on that. So if you take that in the US and you start to extrapolate across 41 different countries, my country, Grenada, where we have a school system of play, but not really the club system to be able to facilitate an academy. What does that look like, and what's our role as Concacaf to promote that? And a lot of data, a lot of work has been done to really help us to be informed about the pathways and what they look like. We have invested in development of coaches, because we all know here, whilst we talk about talent, there is no talent without good coaches. And there are no good coaches without a pathway for those potential coaches. And with the launch of our coaching convention, we feel like that's an important part of making sure that a CONCACAF D license and a CONCACAF C license is going to help those coaches to be able to work with the top talent. What we can do in tournaments, we're the only confederation in the world that has a U15 tournament, bringing all of our member associations together in a centralized tournament to play at appropriate levels, to really get that competition, to prepare them for the U17 tournaments that will be coming in both boys and girls levels. So as a confederation, it's not typical to have a confederation talking about talent pathways. That's done by the clubs, that's done by academies. But we recognize that we have to do something tailor-made for our region, and our investment in competition and coaching is an excellent first step and part of our vision through our president, Victor Montagliani.
Great answer. And I'll stay with you here as well, because you've obviously got nations where there's probably talent all over the world that you don't see, right? And you look at the UK and the US or Australia, where there's going to be a lot big expat communities, and yourself playing in the UK all your life, but been out to represent Grenada as well. So is there a way you currently try and reach that? Is there a plan for that? And we've got the kind of local side of stuff that we can talk about, but certainly that global entity for you, how do you deal with that?
It's a really interesting question, because a lot of you may be thinking this Grenadian man has a very English accent. There's a reason for that. Of course, I come from the diaspora. My parents came from the Caribbean. I was born in the UK, and we have various footballers here. I look at Nigel Reo-Coker, I look at Chris Nurse, who played for Guyana. And where we have been fortunate is that we were born in a country which had a talent, not only ID, but also a pathway. And I went to various different academies. I was released from various academies because I wasn't of the appropriate level at the time. The question we need to ask ourselves, if we're going to make sure that every talent has the opportunity to develop, would I have been the player I became if I was born in my home country of Grenada? I would say potentially I wouldn't, because I wouldn't have had access to the coaches, I wouldn't have had access to the systems and the competition at the highest level. So I think that there's an important piece of work that needs to be done. Of course, in these more sophisticated ecosystems, the clubs and the academies do that work. We need to find a way to create that system whilst making sure that CONCACAF enforces standards, whether it's through our club licensing, whether it's through our coaching convention, to make sure the top coaching talent is working with the best technical talent.
Big challenger.
I get up motivated every day, I can assure you. I have a lot of CONCACAF colleagues here in the room, and we wake up focused on the fact that we can make a real positive change in the region. This is about more than just who wins and loses on the weekend. This is about how can we make sure that football makes a big impact in the communities. And of course, we're here talking about talent, we're talking about elite, but actually how do we make sure that everyone gets something from football through access to the actual competition and to the game? Because we all know that is the bedrock of everything that we do here in football.
Yeah, and actually you say community there as well, because I know that's a massive touch point for the other three gentlemen as well. And maybe starting with Nick and the work you did at San Antonio. We had a brief discussion about what you tried to look for and how you impact the local community. So, and can you tell us a bit about the impact of that and what you've seen by doing that, what you've achieved by doing that? And Nick, I'll come to you after as well, because I know it's the same thing for Frankfurt in terms of the local players you use.
So I think obviously the optimal measurement for a talent development is whether a player plays potentially professional. That's what most people would measure. I think in our context, in our case, we measure it from its social impact on a greater scale of every player and their individual pathway. And how can we then relate that to the cultural system existence of our society, which in San Antonio, in our strategy, in the front end of the strategy, identified that it was one of the lowest cities in the United States for secondary education beyond GED. So it was our reality became that not every player is going to be a professional, but within their experience, can we arrive them at a point where there's an opportunity to potentially go to college to get secondary education, which would then be our contribution to the greater society of the city. And it was measurable based upon the amount of scholarship funds received for that individual. You could then create the understanding that this was our success. And it was multi-layered, not just ROI on player development, but there was a ROI on player economic impact as a cultural part for the city.
And how long did that take to develop that program, that philosophy and that thinking? That's not an overnight thing, right? That must have been quite a long process for San Antonio.
It's a 6-year process.
Okay. And Nick, we spoke before as well, I know, because Frankfurt as a community is very passionate about being from Frankfurt, and you've got local players that their dream is playing for Frankfurt, but you also recruit from particularly Scandinavian countries. So can you just give us an insight into the differences you maybe see from reaching out to talent that's not in your local area compared to what you see in the local area, maybe the success that breeds for the club?
The situation in Germany is different than in the US. We have a small country. For example, Texas is 3 times bigger as Germany size-wise, but we still have more than 80 million people living in Germany. So the competition is very tough in Germany to recruit talented players. We have a big soccer tradition in Germany. And what we are doing when they are 16, with 16 you are allowed in UEFA to sign players from other European countries. So what is everybody doing? They would go abroad and sign players from Sweden, from Norway, from Cyprus, from different countries. You sign better players. At least this is what you think when you sign them. That's the reason why you sign them. But then you realize when they are in Germany and Frankfurt, and we are a really multicultural city and a multicultural club, then you realize the problems. The guy from Spain, the guy from Italy, the guy from Cyprus or from Norway, different languages, different cultures, different school systems. They all have to be adjusted somehow and to fit into the group of German players in the Frankfurt area. It's not that you sign a player from a different state in the United States. We all speak the same language, same high school system, whatever. It's different cultures in the youth team. And we realized at the end of the day, when we look back the last 10 years, the players who really made it to the Bundesliga and established themselves there were the players from our region. So they all came in a circle from 40, 50, 60 miles. Later on, the professional team, they sign players when they are 20 or 22, already played in the first or second division somewhere in Europe. They are professionals which they sign. But we sign young players when they are 16, and you never know how much is left in their abilities and their potential. Is there 20% left? Is there only 2% left? How much is left? How much chances do you have for developing them really for a Bundesliga player? And it helps, of course, if you are on the same language, you live still in your same social environment with your friends, with your family, with your school. That helps a lot to stabilize and bring to be ready to bring your quality on the pitch.
Yeah. And Jason, from your side, when you find these talented players and maybe they come into the American system or even coming into Europe to play, is there support there to help that transition from a cultural point of view? Because it's a really important point. I think there's talent moving around the world all the time, and we wonder why sometimes there's not success when they've got all the ability in the world, and that culture and the emotion behind it is so important. How can we help players be more successful in those transitions?
I think it's a really important point, and I think it's something that we're considering more with global movement. And you see what, in my time playing against the USA and Canada, if you look at the teams now, look very different in regards to their demographic. So I think there's opportunities there. We've seen Canada specifically in the way that they've embraced new Canadians and the way that they've really fast-tracked them to be given an opportunity, and that it brings something different to their team. From a national association standpoint, we've seen different models. We've seen the likes of Bermuda in our region, who have worked really closely with scholarships and provided scholarships for young talent to be able to be transported so that they can get into a pathway that is a little bit more sophisticated than what they have currently. If you talk in Europe, Germany, we all know what a German player is. We know there's a philosophy around the way that the talent is developed, and it's credit to them that they have that. If you look at a place like Iceland, actually it's really about how quickly they can get their talent into an environment where they can be molded and given opportunity to have the best talent around them and work with the best coaches. That's a very different view in regards to two different member associations, two different countries. And we're seeing the benefits that Iceland have had by getting young players and getting them out into different leagues across Europe, whereas in Germany, the sophisticated academy model and the work that they do with the FA means that there's a joined up thinking about their strategy and what they want to get from their players. So I think we see two very different models there. Of course, we have 41 different opportunities to build these models and the role that we play as a confederation. But culturally, of course, there's always challenges. But you'll find that within a country with the way that the global movement of people, which in my view is an absolute opportunity.
I think it's almost a summary of you don't grow roses in concrete. You say there about having that joined up approach. So you've got Iceland and Germany, as you called out there, who have two very different approaches, but they both work. They both work because from top to bottom, there's a philosophy.
But most importantly, there's a strategy and there's a philosophy that's being implemented by the FA in this case, having a clear, defined vision on what they want from their players and their talent pathway for their players. So I think that's something from a confederation standpoint we want to promote with our member associations.
Right. And we're talking there a little bit about global movement as well. So I think it would be amiss not to talk about the pandemic a little bit. I'm sure that's going to be everybody's talk. So that global movement obviously had a big hit in the last couple of years. And so things had to change in academy structures and from executive level as well in how we do things. And that had a massive impact on recruiting players and developing players as well. So I think if we come to you, Elliot, obviously being a general manager at Real Salt Lake, talk us through the challenges that imposed on you in terms of talent ID and developing talent, but then where are you now? What's come out of it that maybe going forward you won't go back to because you've developed a new way of doing stuff?
Sure. The challenges. Do we have more time than? I mean, we could talk the rest of the day about the challenges. No, it's
get a Zoom call going and we'll just record it.
Yeah, no, it's been an incredibly difficult couple of years. Obviously, I mean everybody knows that it's been difficult everywhere. I think maybe the really acute challenge in terms of talent identification at a youth level, especially for a club like ours, where we don't live in a huge city. We live in a fairly small city by most MLS standards. So we're trying to identify talent and youth talent over massive pieces of geography. So we're trying to identify players down in Arizona, in Utah, parts of California, parts of Texas. We're all over the place, and the challenge obviously with COVID was we couldn't travel. We couldn't get our eyes on players. So we had to get creative, and we had to find ways to create networks, but also as I think a couple of these guys have touched on already. Data becomes a really important part of the process, and technology becomes a really important part of the process. And so we're really trying to bring all of that into the pipeline, into the process of identifying young talent, and as I think we've all touched on, get players in as early as we can, get talented players into our system with our coaches, under our roof, and into our environment as quickly as we can. So what have we learned from that I think we'll keep? I mean, I think we've started to use some of those technological platforms that will become irreplaceable moving forward. And as we've all seen with technology in our sport, we're just scratching the surface on what it can be, and I think it'll continue to develop exponentially over years. But I think that's going to be the biggest takeaway from the last couple of years is the involvement of technology in the youth side of things as well.
Yeah, great. And I think you are right. I think we need to leave some time for questions from the audience, but I've got two more, and I think I'll throw it out to the group because I think they'll probably stimulate some questions from the audience. And you touched on a bit here, Elliot. So I think if each of you had to say what you're interested in the most next, so for player development particularly more than maybe the idea at this point, where your own organisations are already going that excites you, and something that you think needs more either development or more resources in, or just something that you think we need to tackle next? So just because Jason's nodding, I presume he's got an answer in his head. So he's under his own pressure now.
I just nod. That's like a tick.
Well, you're on. You're on.
No, from our perspective, I think, and I think we're all going to touch on data at some point, as was already mentioned. But I think from our perspective, how can we standardize the language of football? Is there an opportunity for us? As you know, we spoke about diversity of language and diversity of realities, but how can we standardize the way we talk about the game? How can we standardize the way we look at the game? Everyone will have their own philosophy within that, but if you're talking about 41 different countries, 200 and odd countries from a wider perspective, if we can have a dialogue where we all understand the language a little bit better, I think that's an opportunity. Of course, there's a huge opportunity with data, especially in talent development. How quickly can we utilize data to really inform ourselves on the abilities of young players globally? And I think there's also a lot of work to be done around pathways. And this is something that I'll continually go back to, because my role at Concacaf is to interact with all of these systems. It's not to enforce anything on these systems, it's to collaborate and support them. So I think if we can democratize that opportunity for talent to be developed, and it will look different in every different country, if we can do that, then I think that those opportunities will be huge for us. From our perspective, one last thing is our team with Jonathan Martinez and Christian Tonelli have been doing a lot of work in benchmarking. How can we use data to inform strategic decisions? Technical teams come and go, leaderships come and go in different FAs, but if there is something that's larger than that, a 2030 strategy we have at Concacaf, which is, okay, we won't be here forever, but when we leave, is there something that the new leadership can look to and say, okay, this is where we were heading, let's inform it, let's tweak it, but actually based on data, what is the right way forward for Grenadian football, for Trinidad and Tobago football, for USA football?
Yeah, that's a great point on benchmarking too, because as we drift into collecting data and more, if it's not relevant to something, then it's not applicable. We can't use it, so it's just noise. So I think you're right, having the data and the benchmark and the pathway makes a lot of sense. We'll just walk down the line. Elliot, so to yourself, what's going on in your world and what you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say I'm really looking forward to, as I touched on at the very beginning, we're very new to development in our club and really in this country. At least organized strategic development, underneath professional clubs. And so I think what I'm most excited about is just seeing all of the work that's been put in and all of the infrastructure that's been built, and seeing the fruits of that labor, really continue to prosper. I think we're only at the point now where the first kid that went into our academy, when we started it, is probably 27 years old now. So we haven't even seen the product of what we can do from a developmental standpoint at our club, certainly. But I think in this country, it's the future is really bright, and development has taken on a huge level of importance in the professional game here, and we're just starting to see the beginning of what that means.
Nice. And Nick, how about yourself? I know you've got some exciting stuff happening yourself anyways, but in terms of the game itself, what you're looking forward to?
I think the essence of talent ID and development is that you're working with children. So the notion of, for anyone who has a child, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to develop a player. And this understanding of the next generation of players that we work with and the influences and around them, and how we can become more familiarized with their values and their values that impact and reflect their life on a daily basis, and how then we can connect that values of how they operate, function on a daily basis into how they think about soccer. And I think for us, in our innovation, it's trying to connect values, leadership through our understanding of how they perceive each situation that they're involved in, that they're engaged in, and to know a wider understanding of the player rather than just seeing the player in observation, but to know the player as a person, to know the family, cooperation, communication, collaboration, to know the village. And that's the big thing for us in the future is, do you know the village of the player? It's beyond the player. There's 10, 15, 20 people who impact him every single day. Do you know that village? The player that you may see there on a daily basis may be impacted by something in the village. So I think for us as we move forward, collecting understanding of values and how people perceive situations, how people interact, and then the people that they surround themselves with, are there opportunities for us to create understandings of players from those environments?
I'm just going to pick up on one question on that as well, just from me really. So we've researched a lot in formative years and looking at these touch points of players and the teachers and the coaches and the teammates that they've all been part of, that village, as you put it. How is there an argument to say that if a player is mega talented but doesn't that village of that player doesn't match yours, that we should be pushing them somewhere else? We should be take away the rivalries of clubs, and we should be saying, actually, the development of this player is better suited here. Should we be doing more of that? Do we do that in America already? I don't know. So question to you is do we do that? Should we do that? Can we do that? How do you view it?
Should we do it? Yes. Do we do it? No.
Okay.
That's the reality of it.
Fair.
But I think if you always go back to the essence of these are children, this is somebody's child, this is somebody's future, there's always an opportunity to evaluate.
Something to be worked on then. Good. And I mean, for yourself, yeah, what's going on, Frankfurt? What's coming in? What excites you?
Yeah, I think I'm the oldest guy here, so and I'm the longest in youth soccer maybe. What I learned in the last 2 or 3 decades is that there is not one pathway to professional football. There are different pathways, different ways to be professional one day. It's not a matter of the strategy, the philosophy, the infrastructure. Everything is important, don't misunderstand me. The pitch, but the pitch must not be a putting green quality. We grew up not playing on a putting green quality pitch. I don't know, like about you in Wales maybe, I don't know. But it's at the end of the day, it's the matter of the people who care about the boys, who is dealing with the boys, who is the coach, who else is on the club, like the academy director or the physician or the physiotherapist or whatever. It's about caring of the people. These are human beings, these are young players, these are not Ronaldos, or they don't care about the coach at the end of the day because they are so long professional, they know what to do and what not to do. We have children in our academies, and we have to take care about children, like they are your own children, if they would be your own children. And I think one important thing, at least in Germany or in Europe, is very bad thing in my opinion, is every 14-year-old boy who can really barely walk straight has an agent. And we have a lot of difficulties with agents in Germany in academies. They bring in the wrong expectations or too high expectations for the players and their families, and they cannot fulfill these expectations. They struggle with that, and the more important is the club who takes care of the children again. So I think that's a very critical point. Beside philosophy, beside infrastructure, beside physical abilities, is to take care about the mental health. Is that the right word in English? Yeah, mental health and the stability of a player, that he can, if he gets a chance one day, is able to perform on the pitch. And that's the most important thing in my personal opinion. I had it myself when I joined Frankfurt in the youth when I was 15, and I was the only player in the under-19 team who has not been in the state selection. We are a small state. I was not good enough. But half a year later, I played Bundesliga with 18, and I still was in school, at my high school, and there was no online schooling at that time. I had to do it. I had to finish it somehow. But I had a coach who really took care of me. He helped me in school. He joined me. He helped me learning math, which was critical in my school career. So I learned about it's having people around you that help you, that try to guide you on your way, and using the philosophy, the infrastructure, and the money of a good organization.
And actually, it's like you've been reading my notes, because that's a perfect segue into my final question. We talk about pathways, we talk about looking after players as they go through our pathways and through our systems. But inevitably, players are going to be released. We're going to have to let them go, and we'll talk about mental health and the impact that has on their lives and their whole world around them. There's obviously growing attention around that and what we do with that as well. So quickly come down the line again, if there's just a headline statement on what can we do better in this space, maybe what we're already doing as well. So when players are released, how do we keep them in football, or how do we get them into their next opportunity as well? And obviously, again, from a confederation perspective, it's good to start with yourself, Jason.
No, I'll really answer this from a personal perspective, because I think it was a really great point that these are children, these are our children. And from a wellness perspective, from a well-being perspective, it's also our role to make that transition out of the game more comfortable, because the reality is 1% will make a professional debut. Of them, how many will really have a career? And I was very fortunate in my career to play to 35 years old, to be part of the Professional Footballers Association Management Committee. And we did a lot of work about how can we put in place, because we have a duty of care for well-being for each and every one of these individuals. The club have a role to play, the union has a role to play, everybody within the system has a role to play. I think we have a lot to do. We have to do so much better. At 35, you retire knowing very well that 1 out of 3 will be bankrupt within 5 years, 3 out of 5 will be divorced. And all of that is about the pressure of coming out of the game. And that's someone who earned a living, performed at a good level, and lived their dream. We've all probably done this, and many of you might have done this, stood in a hallway waiting to be told if you were going to be part of the academy next year, or if you was picked for the next game. And that's very difficult for a young child to deal with. And I was released at 15, and I thought my world had ended. There was nothing there for me to help me and to catch me, and to say that there was value in me as a human being outside of football. I was very fortunate that football came back into my life, and it's given me so much. But there's so many other young people out there who haven't had that opportunity for football to really be a positive in their life because of their bad experiences of transitioning out. And I think all of us have a duty of care to do better where that's concerned.
Yeah, great. I think just to throw that question, before the questions go to the audience, just to you, Elliot, because the optics of being a general manager as well. Obviously, you've got a business to run, you've got sponsors that are involved, and success needs to be there on the pitch, but at the same time, we've got the safeguarding side of things. What's that challenge like? That must be quite a difficult balance to achieve in a club, or do you navigate it well? Maybe you're perfect, I don't know.
No, it's really difficult, and look, I don't think I can say it any better than these guys have. It's when I speak with our staff and when I speak with our academy about the priorities, I think we always have to remember the number one priority needs to be the people, and it needs to be the kids, and it needs to be developing them off the field. It's not about the on-field development nearly as much as it is about preparing them for life, because as Jason said, there's the vast majority of them are not going to play professionally. They're not going to make a living in the game, and they need to be able to land on their feet, and we need to provide for them. We need to provide them the opportunity to land on their feet. It's the number one priority we have when we talk about our academy and when we talk about our kids and how to build the structures around them.
I can ask you questions all day. I can talk about this stuff all day, and I will if anyone wants to talk about this all day, today and tomorrow. But we should throw it to the audience. I think there's a couple of mics that are going to come around. And any questions from the audience?
My name is Jordan. I'm from Salt Lake City, and my question is for Jason. What is Concacaf doing to increase resources for youth development in countries in the Caribbean and Central America which lack the resources to develop talent?
Thank you for the question. So in regards to development, it's a very broad area, as we've discussed today. I think if you look at talent ID, for talent to be able to be seen and developed, we have just launched our coaching convention. And I've been talking about this every day, and I think most of you might be thinking, what is a coaching convention? What does that mean? It goes back to the core thing that we've been speaking about here. There is no talent without good coaches. And what we have to do and what our role is to ensure that every single country has coaching instructors who can create new coaches, and that we can create a curriculum, a Concacaf B license, a Concacaf C license, a B, right the way up to pro, so that no matter where you are in the region, you're going to be working with a top coach. So that's the training element done. Of course, from that perspective, any club that performs in our competition, they're subject to our club licensing. And through our club licensing, we'll ensure they'll have certain things in place, standards in place, to make sure that you're having a good experience when you're part of their program. In addition to that, what do we do with our member associations? So we've invested in our U15 tournament, as I said earlier. We're the only confederation who have done that. So at 14 years old, no matter where you are in the world, if you're selected, boy or girl, there's an opportunity for you to go and perform in a centralized tournament where hopefully everyone can see you play. In addition to that, we've launched our new Concacaf W women's qualifiers. We're the only confederation outside of UEFA which has a Nations League. What does that mean? It means that when I played for Grenada, I turned up every 4 years, played a game, maybe beat Barbados, lost to USA, I'll see you in 4 more years. What we have now is hundreds of games going on through the international calendar, so talent is being able to be seen, it's televised, and people are able to see that. So we're doing a lot of work in our role as a confederation, but of course we need to work with each country to make sure they're supplementing that and creating opportunities for the talent and the opportunities that they have.
Hey guys, James Hamblin from Teamworks. Elliot, specific question for you. I had the privilege to visit the facility last year and meet with some of your staff members. And you talked about the need to recruit people from California, Texas, Arizona for you specifically. How do you leverage RSL Academy High School to recruit those youth members to come? And then once they're there on site, how do you leverage the Academy High School to develop them both on and off the pitch?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it really touches on the all-encompassing developmental approach of the organization, which is, when we bring players in, and as I said, and you pointed out, we're bringing players in from Arizona and California and Texas and Michigan, all over the country. And so one thing that makes us unique is that means that we have to house these kids. We have to house these boys and make sure that we are taking care of them. They're not just showing up for training sessions and video sessions and on-field work. They're under our roof all day, every day. And we're effectively the parents to 60 high school kids, so to answer your question it is, the high school that we have on site is absolutely a key component of our developmental system. That's where the boys go every day to get a sense of normalcy, to go and take classes with fellow high schoolers. We made a very conscious decision for that school to not just be our players, for it to be a public charter school, so that we would have kids from all over the community under that roof, so that our boys would have a real high school experience. That is, it's instrumental to what we do. It's important that school provide them with a quality education, because most of those kids, again, aren't going to play professionally, and so they need to go to college, and so our goal is to get every kid a college scholarship, to be able to play in college, and if they aren't playing professionally, to continue their education and move on that way. So it's critical to what we do.
Hi, I'm Leo De Souza from Inter Atlanta FC, a youth club in Atlanta, Georgia. The American market has a particularity, which is the presence of a different governing body, U.S. club soccer and leagues like ECNL, for example, on a youth game. How challenging is to have those players on a pathway, to have that player development pathway once players are divided and split, talent is split between 2 different leagues and 2 different governing bodies, such as MLS Next and ECNL, USYS, US Club Soccer. How challenging is to have that pathway once not all the athletes are playing under the same umbrella?
Sure, it certainly presents a challenge. I think every country, every league, every team is unique, and the challenges that present that present themselves for you to overcome are unique. I think that's one, that in this country we have to deal with. It's not insurmountable. It's not something that, I would say, I imagine that other teams in our league have more challenges with that situation than we do. But it absolutely is challenging. It's finding the right way to fit within the ecosystem and to work within the ecosystem, but also maximize what we do on a daily basis.
Hello, I'm Julian Lopez from Colombia, representing Goal to Soul. My question is for Nick. Talking about talent ID, how can we enhance our approach in order to enhancing opportunities for those kids off the pitch? Not only talking about talent ID within the pitch. I mean, how can we identify the next football journalist, the next football lawyer, and the next football businessman in order to enhance those opportunities off the pitch also?
Well, I think one of the driving strategy factors at the beginning of what we wanted to do was, if a player leaves San Antonio FC at any point, he's still a fan of San Antonio FC. So within a club, within an organization, there is many different functions that people fill in terms of roles, the opportunities that we have for, the potential for the player in the future to hopefully want to be part of the club that he loves because that's his club, that potentially, if he doesn't become a professional player, he can become the club's media guy, or he can become the club's communications person. So to take the start point of, you're not here as a football player, you're here as a child who supports the club and the team first, and there's this desire and affection and love for the club. On one of the strategies that we had for talent identification with players who were external of San Antonio, it was to do a economic evaluation of the family of the potential player, and it was to determine that if that player was to come to San Antonio, we would never bring a player on his own, he had to come with his family. Was there an opportunity for that family to have a better way of life in our city? Our organization, club, we would provide opportunities for parents to have employment, et cetera, et cetera. So there's this added element of trying to improve not just the player situation by providing a pathway, by opening up the opportunities for the parents as well within this organization.
Hi guys, my name is Ryan Macaniano. I'm from the San Francisco Glens. This question's for Elliot. So we run a nonprofit academy in San Francisco. We developed a player, Cruz Medina, all the way up to U13 level when the local MLS club, the San Jose Earthquakes, ID'd him, and we were more than happy to send him to him to give him that opportunity. So fast forward 2 years later, and now Cruz has just gone on trial with Bayern Munich, and he has opportunities to trial with Leipzig and Mainz, which is great, but when he turns pro when he's 18, we're not going to get a dime of that. So my question for you is, I guess, based on how you see things have gone, do you see any evolution in the future in terms of compensating these feeder clubs like ours so that in the future, we have the resources to produce the next Cruz Medina for the big brother MLS club?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there needs to be an evolution. I think it's something we've looked at as a club where, we all have to work within the parameters and within the confines of, the leagues and systems in which we operate. But, we've talked about providing for clubs when we take a player from a local youth club. How can we how can we give back to them? Is it a scholarship that we can provide them? Is it a, is there, or fund a scholarship for the club, something like that? Or, there are a lot of ways to do it. Obviously, there is also, FIFA has training compensation and solidarity mechanisms that are designed to help in that situation. It's obviously more difficult in this country, and it's more complicated than, I think, and Armin could probably speak to this, but in Europe it's a whole lot cleaner and simpler, and it's a system that's been in place a lot longer, and we're just trying to figure it out. But it absolutely is critical. It's critical that not only clubs like yours be provided the resources when a player is taken from them so you can continue to do that good work, but it's so that you're rewarded for doing that good work as well, and you're incentivized to continue to do the good work, and you're incentivized to encourage your players to pursue opportunities and become a part of that pathway. I think it's something we're probably a little behind on, but we need to continue to work towards and improve.
So my question is for Elliot. Being from Salt Lake, I've seen the growth that Real Salt Lake has had, and my question is, how or what is RSL doing to stay as one of the leading clubs in the MLS to develop the homegrown player?
Yeah. So, we're very fortunate. We just brought in we had a new ownership group come in and buy the club, and so in order to stay at the forefront of the league and to stay, what I believe is an elite club in our league and a club that can do special things, we're doubling down on our investment in development, and I think that's the most important piece long term. That's what's going to allow us to be a club that competes at the highest level in our league. But we're also investing in infrastructure, in stadium, training facility, and obviously some players on the pitch as well. So.
Good. I think it's all got time for anyway. So if we can just thank Armin, Nick, Elliot, and Jason with a little round of applause. So thanks for your time, gentlemen. And I speak for them, but they're around all day, right? So just grab them for more questions. I'm around too, so if you're interested in what we're doing in that space as well, please come and find us or use the app and we'll have a chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, man. Thank you.